even 10 million. You know, in an international gathering on water, which is a big thing, the person running the Delhi water and sewerage system should be a person who at the age of 30 decided, I'm going to specialize in this and work at it and attend international conferences where other people from whatever, Sao Paulo and Rio and others say, well, how are you handling these 20 million people? Because I'm doing it this way for 15 million. And somebody from Cambodia will come along and say, well, look, I've only got 1 million, but I'm doing a lot better job than you are. There should be a professionalism about this. And we are not doing that. And I think we're not doing that because the government wants to have its hands on everything, which is wrong. Gajendra is absolutely right. There is an enormous resistance to unlocking land value because we've discussed this with, I mean, for example, the Planning Commission has been consistently of the view that metros should be run on a PPP basis because there can be the huge costs involved. Part of those costs can be financed by the realization of land value. Huge resistance everywhere, except in 1 or 2 cases. In Mumbai, for example, they frankly tell you that this realization of land value will become a scam. Now, it's sort of assumed that if the government does it, it's not a scam, but if you give it to the private sector, it is a scam. I have my doubts, you know, in the sense that it's a scam if it's not transparent either way. If it's transparent, it should be possible to realize land value. But the resistance is enormous. And some of the resistance one can also understand because we haven't yet evolved. Now, in some places, like in Hyderabad, for example, they are doing it through a PPP method. They've run into other problems. You know, maybe 2 years, 3 years down the road, as some projects succeed and others don't, maybe we'll have something. I think the example in Magar, I haven't read the Isha Mohanty chapter, but in Magarpatta, which I mentioned earlier, that is a case where property rights are respected and you say, this is your land, we're going to give you the right to convert it. You're right, we should be able to charge for that. And that could be done quite transparently. You know, that the fee for converting from agricultural to commercial is X, and it can be paid over a period of time. And if you do that, a lot of these problems would actually disappear, in my view. Thank you.
Well, let's say thanks to Montec for an excellent Let me now hand over to Isha for the next session. We're going to go straight into the next session, and Isha will explain.
Yes, I think since we started 15 minutes late, and since a lot of the questions that were being put to Montec were really in the area that Elaine is going to be speaking, we thought we'll make a seamless transition to the next session. And Elaine Bertaud will speak about urban planning and urban infrastructure. Tea will be served here. So please bear with us. Thank you, Elaine.
Well, I'm glad to be back in Delhi. Thank you for inviting me here. I had the privilege to read an advanced copy of the book we are discussing today. And because I had a long involvement in India, you know, the first time I started working in India, I was 23 years old, so that's a long time ago. It's the first time that I read a document which has a lot of weight and is not written by one person, and at the same time put in practically every chapter markets and urban development in the same, covered in the same idea that planning and markets have to be complementary. This is new in India, I think. Most of the time, I have noticed that land market were considered to be nearly the domain of criminals. Even I think that Rakesh Mohan, some 20 years ago, talked about the criminalization of real estate in India. And I think he was right. In India, for many years, it was a bit like prohibition in the United States in the 20s, you know, when you deal with real estate. And this is not conducive to good planning, especially if you are, after all, a democracy. You are not a central planning organization. You are not a country, you know, in a command economy. So you have to live with market. So the first thing for planners is to understand markets. And I think that in a certain way, Montek talked about the issue. He put, you know, the pricing issues all the time in up front. I think that this is what's very important for planners. If they want to do anything, they have to integrate market. In the book too, there are a lot of, there are a certain number of bag of tricks, I will say, which are described quite in detail and very well documented, which precisely, I think, address some of the concern that we have heard on the question on the pricing of land. And the pricing of land is not a bad thing in itself if you know how to use it. I will see the role of government and market in a certain way that consumption for most of the people, land consumption and floor consumption, should be decided by markets. And by the way, they are decided by market. If somebody in a slum consumes 3 square meters of floor space, this is market. It is not a regulation. You may have a regulation in your book which says EWS have to consume 20 square meters, but it is a market. So you have to understand market. You cannot regulate yourself out of poverty or out of market. Now, what is the role of government? The role of government is design. Design is, in a way, the opposite of market. Market is a mechanism. And it's a mechanism we have to understand. It's a bit like gravity. You cannot design an airplane if you don't understand gravity. It's the same thing for a city. You cannot design even a sewer system if you don't understand land market and the price of water, by the way. So the role of government is to design things. And here, unfortunately, there are no signals from market. If you want, the primary, I think, role of government and planners is to design at a metropolitan level a network of primary roads and primary infrastructure. This has to be designed. There is no feedback on market. If the planner is wrong on the density, the market will modify it. You will see it, if you listen to market, you will see it right away. So you can modify that. If you have not designed a network system at the scale of those huge scale like Delhi Metropolitan Authority or Mumbai or Bangalore or Chennai, if you have not designed the right system of transport or the right system of right-of-way for all your trunk infrastructure, there is no way the market will rectify it. You know, when you have a high demand for land, either more land get developed or people consume less land. If you have a high demand for a road, you only have congestion. You don't have more roads being created. So the government has to do as a role there. But again, a government or a planner who do not understand market have no chance to develop and finance the right thing. Another thing that government has to do, of course, beside the design of the trunk infrastructure, are regulations. Now, in my opinion, in India right now, I give a number like that. I like to be quantitative. About 80% of the land use regulation are obsolete. Probably 20% are valid. In my opinion, you should have a general audit of all regulations. Try to find what is their objective. What do those regulations do to market? Most of the time, I see regulations which have as a result to increase the demand for land. For instance, unreasonable limitation of FSI, increase the demand for land. This is what, basically it tells people, you would like to consume little land, we will oblige you to consume more. At the same time, the government first do not invest enough in infrastructure. That means that the supply of land is very limited. So on one hand, regulation push you to consume more land. On the other hand, other regulation, like green belt and things like that, or lack of investment in infrastructure, reduce the supply. Now again, you don't need to be really a very good economist to know that if you increase demand and reduce supply, you will end up with extraordinary high prices. I will quote one of my compatriots, a philosopher of the Enlightenment, Montesquieu, who wrote, "Useless laws weaken the necessary laws." If you have a lot of laws which cannot be enforced because they are unreasonable, you create corruption, and at the same time, you give a complete disregard for all laws, although some of them are absolutely necessary. So I think that one of the things which need to be done now is this audit of law, and not to be really ready to discard the one which are not necessary. There is a very interesting chapter in the book on inclusion and the growth of slums. Again, here we are at the intersection between planning and market. Basically, what are slums? Or illegal subdivision or illegal settlement? They are mostly people who are too poor to afford the minimum standards which are in the book. So if you were moving this line, those standards one way or another, you will immediately legalize some of the settlement or illegalize some settlement which right now are illegal. What I think planners, when they do those regulations, minimum standard, especially the regulation which control consumption, minimum plot size, maximum FSI, minimum floor area, minimum parking space, all those regulations make it compulsory to consume a certain amount of land and floor space in order to have access to the city. Now, the amount of money which corresponds to all those minimum regulations depends really, again, on the land market, on the productivity of the construction industry, on the price of cement, on the price of energy, a lot of things that the planner do not consider, when they establish this regulation. Some people tell me, but you will want really to say that low-income people should be allowed to consume only 10 square meter of floor space per apartment? Wouldn't that reduce standards, which are already very low? My answer is that under your system, they consume much less than that right now. So what we have to do is to acknowledge that a city